Welcome to the year's final episode of Why Dance Matters, the Royal Academy of Dance podcast. It's a festive one. Oh yes it is. Here in the UK, it's pantomime season. Panto, that uniquely British blend of song, dance, dressing up and sheer silliness. Oh, and pantomime cows. Its appeal is hard to explain to anyone not steeped in it, so it's great that a cherished comic actor is joining us to reveal the magic of the art form. This winter, Nina Wadia plays Fairy Sugarsnap in Jack in the Beanstalk at York Theatre Royal. Judging from the photos, she's dressed as an artichoke, which is lovely. Pantomime drives its performers hard. We spoke to Nina in between two shows, fresh from a packed audience of excitable kids. There's much more to Nina than dressing as vegetables. She grew up in India and Hong Kong, but made her career in Britain, starting at a time when opportunities for actors of colour were limited. 25 years ago, Nina was one of the underused and extra talented writer-performers who created Goodness Gracious Me, a trailblazing sketch show taking the lid off Britain's Indian community and merrily exposing the eccentricities of both cultures. Honestly, it's joyous. Nina's work since has been very varied, including several years on the iconic British soap EastEnders as Zainab, a meddling matriarch with a backnote of tragedy. And as she tells us, Nina's had her own dark moments. Our conversation revisits a terrible car crash, but also reveals how it helped her embrace the vagaries of an actor's life. I'm David Jays. Welcome to this festive episode of Why Dance Matters. Nina, you have just finished your first show of the day, Jack and the Beanstalk, York Theatre Royal. I gather not a technically unchallenging one, but even so, a morning's pantomime. That's quite an exciting way to start the day.
That's one word for it.
Bracing.
It's very bracing. You have just under 1,000 school children screaming at you. So that certainly wakes me up. You know, not being a morning person.
Oh, wow. A shock to the system.
Yeah, it's my idea of doing a comedy horror.
And do you get the children in the palm of your hand quite quickly? Are they feral? How is it?
Do you know, strangely, they actually really like the fairy. I have to say I'm in a state of shock about this, but they really love her. So I do get them on side, I think possibly within under a minute, because I'm first up on stage and I have to get them on board. And the easiest way to do that is to give them full permission to scream and stamp their feet every time they see me. And they seem to embrace that quite wholeheartedly.
And you are, as you say, Fairy Sugarsnap in Jack and the Beanstalk. I've seen photos. Very fetching artichoke costume.
Well, it's interesting because I'm playing Fairy Sugarsnap, yet my costume is what to me looks like an aubergine inside of an artichoke. So I didn't quite know what the designer was thinking, but somehow she works. I've had the aubergine follow me around my whole career. When I did Goodness Gracious Me, I'd created a character called Mrs. I Can Make It at Home. Yes. And she insisted on making everything with a small aubergine. So before aubergine emojis came along, I used to have to sign aubergines at the end of shows.
What, people would bring an aubergine to you?
They would bring me aubergines. They'd send me aubergines. Some woman even made a jewelry piece made out of an aubergine. Honestly, I cannot tell you. So, yes. And I hate aubergines.
Oh, no, don't say that.
I really do. My least favourite vegetable.
I'm so sorry. And yet a continuing trauma of your performing career.
Completely.
We'll move away very quickly. But we're not going to move away from panto because are you singing? Are you dancing? Is there physical comedy slapstick stuff?
All of the above. And it's lovely because I haven't done panto in 33 years. So this was my first sort of foray back into the genre. And can I just tell you, I have such respect for pantomime actors. They're the hardest working in the business, that is for sure.
It is hardcore, isn't it?
It's full on, completely full on, but it's fun. The morning shows I have to kind of get used to because I don't feel like acting at 10:30 in the morning.
Funnily enough, yeah.
Yeah. But the evening shows, I absolutely love them. They also have a slightly more adult audience. And actually what's lovely about this panto is that it's actually written for both kids and adults. And I think that makes a massive difference. So the adults really enjoy it. And then we come away kind of buzzing at the end of the end show. But I've started to love the morning shows because it's a different audience. And I've realized actually in the morning show, I don't necessarily actually need to speak. I just need to be on stage and just kind of let everything sparkle and shine for a little bit, and the kids go mental.
That is very lovely. There are not many jobs where you can just walk on stage dressed as a variety of vegetables and bring joy.
That is true. You know what? I should appreciate it more.
So you grew up outside the UK.
Yes.
And I think your first exposure to pantomime was when you were cast in your first London job. So that must have been quite peculiar. And we have quite a big international audience who might be blissfully ignorant about pantomime. It's such a British form. What can we tell them? What is pantomime?
Pantomime to me is like, it's, to be honest, growing up in India, this is a Bollywood film on stage. Because to me, Bollywood films are pantos. They are. You've got the singing and the dancing, running around trees in the rain. You've got lots of slapstick. You've got crazy comedy characters. You've got, the romance it's always a romance in a Bollywood film. And you've got the bad guy. I mean, it genuinely is Bollywood on stage is what it is. And I'm surprised no one's ever created a Bollywood panto before because it would go down a storm.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I should go away and write one for next year.
Absolutely. Is there a Bollywood equivalent of the pantomime dame?
Yeah, to be honest, anyone who plays the mother-in-law just normally looks like it actually looks like a man playing a woman, but it's normally a woman. But yes, to me, because I also at drama school, I actually studied mime itself. So when I went for the audition and I remember they said, "Oh, you're going for a pantomime," I thought it had something to do with mime, so I was all prepared for it. And the first thing they said when I walked in the room was, "Well, so what's your song? And, have you prepared a piece? Do you have anything like a dance piece?" And I thought, this is a very strange mime.
I was going to very seriously give you the human condition without words, and you're asking me to do what?
But I had a lovely associate director called Jeff Tier at Theatre Royal Stratford East, and he was so lovely to me, and he just explained what it was, and I said, "Oh, it's kind of just a musical, but at Christmas time." And he was like, "Yeah, that you can start with that description." So,
and then we'll work up to the pantomime cow. But yeah,
exactly,
baby steps. So you grew up in Mumbai, in India, and I think then in Hong Kong. What was your childhood like?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. We'd been out of India because Dad used to work for the airlines, but never lived in another country up until then. So I was 9 years old, and the decision was made very quickly that we were going to move to this other country. So suddenly I was very close to China. I knew nothing of the language. I did not know, a lot of what was going on. And most of the signs, even though it was a British colony at the time, a lot of it was just China-based. So I had to learn an entire new culture, an entire new way of living. But it kind of is also a mini New York. That's how I describe Hong Kong, because it's got every background, every culture, every race, creed, you name it. They were all there. But I was an expat. So I went from someone who went from my homeland to being an expat. And it was a very strange experience, but I embraced it and I love it. And I love meeting new people and trying new things. I had great friends. And in fact, that friendship group is still my friendship group to date.
Oh, wow.
which is crazy. We've been through marriages, divorces, deaths, births, you name it. That is something a lot of people can't say genuinely. When you have school friends, I think it happens a lot in expat schools. You get very close to people because you're your own little community.
Sure. And it must be really a useful quality when you're performing, when you're in theatre, when you arrive on a job and you have to get very, very close to lots of people very quickly to know that you've got those skills.
Do you know what? You've made a really good point there. I've realised that probably did help me when I moved into theatre and entertainment, because you have to get to know people sometimes quite intimately. I mean, when I did Death in Paradise, it was hilarious because Ardal O'Hanlon was playing my love interest, and he's a very shy person, and as am I. And I remember we clashed teeth the first time we kissed. It was so awkward. But it worked for the scene because we decided that actually the characters can just be awkward around each other. And it really worked for them. So you find a way. But yeah, you have to befriend people very, very quickly. I think that experience of growing up in Hong Kong that way has definitely helped me.
And were you a show-offy little girl? Were there drama classes and dance classes and all of that?
I went to Indian dance classes called Bharatnatyam in India at a very famous actress's place. She was a trained dancer herself, and she used to give these classes, and I loved to dance. My passion was always dance. And it stayed that way when I moved to Hong Kong. And I remember my mum taking me to see some dance classes. But of course, they didn't have Bharatnatyam in Hong Kong. They were like, what is that? I said, well, I looked at ballet and thought, never in a million years. I wanted something with noise, because with Indian dance, you wear bells, and I like the sound of the bells.
Yes. And then and the feet do some stamping. There's a lot of physical movement.
Completely. Yeah. And so then when we were in Hong Kong, I heard this dance class that was going on at the end of the corridor, the ballet school. And I went, what's that? And they said, oh, that's called tap dancing. And I went, I want to do that. I said to my parents. I went into tap classes. But here's the crazy part. Indian dancing is all with flat feet. They flatten your feet. The teachers stand on your feet to flatten them when you're a child, which I'm sure is illegal, by the way. You move to Hong Kong and tap is all light. So I had to learn an entirely different way of dancing. I absolutely loved it. We got so lucky. Not only did I do my ISTD kind of stuff, but we also had American dancers who would come over as surprises. And one year we had Gregory Hines. Honestly, it was like I passed out when I met him.
One of the world's greatest tap dancers.
Completely,
oh, my goodness.
Completely. And I was obsessed with that film and with him in the Russian dance. I was like, what? I can't believe he's here. It was crazy stuff. Wow. So then my passion had always been dance, but I also liked to write. And I would write comedy sketches, mostly based on my teachers. So I used to write these sketches that we used to do as like A-level review kind of weekends. There was one day when one of the girls was not there to perform one of the comedy sketches. And I performed it because I knew the words, but I was terrified. I can dance, I have confidence in that. But acting was like, no, I can't. I have no, comic skills that way. But then I did this one-off and it took off and I got the biggest buzz. So then I did The Importance of Being Earnest. I played Lady Bracknell and she got the biggest laugh in that. And I thought, hang on a minute. Maybe it's not just dance I want to do. Maybe I want to be a comedy actor. I don't know,
Your dad worked for Air India, I think later for the Indian High Commission. I mean, proper jobs. So how did your parents take the news that you wanted to explore drama and performance?
Dad, actually, funny enough, because he'd been in the airlines and a lot of people knew him, Dad was a real character. He was one of these people that if he walked into a room, everyone would gravitate towards him. He was a bit of a performer himself, like in that way, not professionally, but just people knew him. But my mum was the opposite. Mum was much more serious and she was very upset because I'd been doing my A-levels and everything with the hope of going to England to read law. And instead, at the last minute, I went, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to be an actor. And so she didn't talk to me for 6 months. Like she was so mad at me.
Oh, my goodness. Did she come round eventually?
She did when she came to see Thomas Middleton's Women Beware Women. I did that as a play at drama school in my second year. And it was a very heavy part, but my dad made her come to see it. And she, after that moment, said, yeah, you can do this. She understood at that point I didn't want to be a Bollywood actress. I wanted to do classical theatre. That was my passion. So, then she came round, and after that, she literally was my number one fan and very supportive.
Oh, wonderful. Anyone listening to this, anyone who knows your work will know you've got the most beautiful voice. You do loads of radio, and I'm always, when I turn on in the middle of a play and there suddenly your voice will be, and just always enraptured. So was comedy not the initial idea for your career then? Did you think serious classical acting, here I come?
Yeah, literally it went from dance, and then I just thought, if I'm going to do acting, I want to be a serious actor. So I just did plays back to back, and I got very lucky. I would get seen in one play and then put into another. I did that for 7 years. And then at the end of the 7 years, I kind of was a bit down because although I was getting parts, I never really got a really meaty role. That's when Philip Headley, the artistic director of Theatre Royal Stratford, said, well, you write. Go in, write something. So we got together. There were altogether 6 of us, plus our director, Indu Rubersingham, and we put together a comedy sketch show called Do You Eat With Your Fingers? And it was about the experience of being brown people in a white country. And it went down a storm at the theatre. And at the same time, I didn't know this, but the Goodness Gracious Me team was scouting for comedy actors. And I got seen that night. And next thing I know, they said, right, we're going to do this one-off show for the BBC producers at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. Next thing we knew, that got picked up for radio. And then 2 months later, we were on television. And the only thing I'd done on television at that point was one episode of 2.4 Children. And so I had no experience in television. Wow. And I was suddenly in a multi-camera Saturday Night Live show. And I was like, what happened to my career?
And we should say that Indu Rubersingham, who directed that first showcase, has, just as we speak, been announced as the new director of the National Theatre in Britain.
Fantastic. And you know what? Well deserved. Yeah. She is so good at what she does. And we all started at the same time, so she deserves that, honestly. She should be very proud.
And clearly, huge pool of talent that at the time, I guess, wasn't necessarily being picked up on by casting directors. I mean, it's not that long ago, really, but the difference in terms of diverse casting is just enormous, isn't it?
It is. If I'm very, very honest, it was not easy. You know, being a brown actor was not easy. We suffered all kinds of things. You know, firstly, being a woman, I would never be seen for as many parts as other people. Secondly, being a brown woman, it's even less so. It was nothing. And now it's taken so many years, and although the doors have opened, they still haven't opened enough. And still, I'm on so many jobs where I'm paid less than most men doing the show.
No, really?
Oh, yeah. It still happens. It still happens. Yeah. And it is frustrating as anything. But then, you know, something like this comes along and you just go, sorry, you want me to headline a panto in York? And I'm like, why? Yeah.
It's obvious. Don't question.
So I just, just went with it. But I've done that, to be honest, I've done that in most of my career. I've let the universe just guide me. So it's been quite interesting to do it that way.
On Goodness Gracious Me, which is, I think now 25 years old, transformative sketch comedy, you have to establish character very, very quickly and almost draw cartoon lines with your physicality. Is that something that came naturally to you?
Yeah, I think being a mum, when my kids were very little, I was quite animated, and I've always had a childlike energy. My friends tell me that all the time, that I've always had that. So I think it keeps you young, to be honest. And playing a fairy, you kind of, you're in fantasy land and you can allow yourself to be a bit silly and a bit fun. Yeah. And actually, then the kids really get into it because they think you're one of them.
And you have got a job that allows you to access that playfulness. That's kind of the job description of an actor, isn't it?
Oh, completely, completely. It's one of the jobs that you'll never retire on. It'll, whatever happens will happen naturally. I'll go when I go, basically. But it's a lovely profession if you are able to relinquish control of your life. That is the truth. It's not a profession if you want to control your life in any way. I speak to a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers who want to go into the profession. And I'm quite brutally honest. I say to them, it's a risk career. If you're ready to take a risk with your life and either be successful or not, but just be happy, do the job. But if you're someone who worries about where your next paycheck's going to come from, do not be an actor.
Yeah. And interestingly, when you do get a long running job, I guess that can be frustrating in different ways, because for 5 years you were Zainab on EastEnders, as we've mentioned.
Yeah, 6.5 years.
6.5 years.
Yes.
She says with feeling. To live with one character for that length of time, how is that bodily? How is that to have her in your life and in your body?
Not good for me. I mean, some actors love it. Some actors can play the same character for 30 years and they absolutely embrace it because it's fun. But for me, I kind of hit a wall at the 3-year mark, if I'm honest. There were a lot of pluses, a lot of bonuses, but character-wise, I was turning into her. And my husband gave me an ultimatum and said, literally, it's her or me.
Really? You were bringing her home?
Oh, completely, because they made her quite a dark character by the end of it. I was brought in to make the show funny. Then they gave me a domestic violence storyline and I went, how do you expect me to be funny with a domestic violence storyline? That makes, I cannot do that. So I had to take the very dark side of her character and I started to become quite upset and angry a lot. It sounds very cliched, but it actually happened to me. I was turning into her. You kind of just embrace, when you really live the character all day long, it melts into your real personality. And she wasn't a pleasant woman.
No, she was one of those archetypal battle axe matriarchs, wasn't she, that soap operas do so well?
Absolutely. And then I would go home and basically bark orders at my husband. That did not go down well.
Thank goodness you got out before the divorce courts were involved.
Definitely.
Yeah. How did she move? Did she move like you, as it were?
No, very different to me, because I kind of based her very loosely on an aunt of mine, because I used to be scared of this aunt when I was younger. And I wanted to create a slightly frightening woman that was not very approachable by people. I wanted people to be like, oh God, I've got to go and see Zainab now. I think my favorite compliment after being on the show for a year was when I met this couple in Oxford Street. The woman was like, oh, I love your character. And the husband said, oh God, I can't stand it. I like to throw things at the television when you're on there. And I thought that is the best compliment you could have given my character.
Perfect. And interesting, because kind of like the characters you were playing on Goodness Gracious Me, there's characters that are on that hinge of integration. People, and certainly in Goodness Gracious Me, they were characters who were of your parents' and grandparents' generation even.
Yes.
And so very much having a foot in two cultures. And I know I'm Jewish, and I think of that show as the great British Jewish comedy. And I'm sure you hear similar things from people from all sorts of ethnicities and backgrounds, because that in-betweenness is something that through comedy you captured so brilliantly.
Oh, thank you. I really loved being part of that show. It's an institution. But I think some actors are built to last in something like that and maintain, and some are not. And for me, I need variety in my career. There's a joke that my husband has for me where he goes, I get bored so easily sometimes with things, that he says, I'm surprised you're still married to me after 25 years, that you haven't woken up one morning going, you know what, actually I'd prefer another husband. Because I just have that type of personality. I love new things. I never go on a holiday to the same place twice. I will only ever go somewhere different. I just think life's so short and there's so much to do on my bucket list that I've been trying to get through my bucket list since I was about 30 years old. And
So if someone throws a new challenge like a panto at you, you're up for it.
100%. I almost love frightening myself into doing things. It's like, I want to experience as much of life as I can. I had a very severe car accident when I was 33. I was pregnant with my daughter Tia at the time, and I was 3 months pregnant with her, and my car flipped at a reservoir and it overturned, and there was no roof. There was no, like, the steering wheel was on my shins. I mean, it was a very horrific thing. And the fact that I survived that in the most spectacular way, I honestly thought I was going to just die because I'd let go of the wheel and just gone, oh, I've had a nice life. It's fine. Literally at 33. That has given me such a wake-up call for the rest of my life that I just want to embrace every moment of every job and every moment with my family and friends, because I know it can be taken away in a matter of seconds. And that's why I live my life the way I live my life, is because that moment made me so, like, thankful and happy. And I've never really spoken about it publicly, to be honest. But I guess it's your interviewing technique. You've relaxed me so much and talking to you like a friend.
I'm just very nosy.
Well, you're a very good nosy neighbor. But yeah, for me, that is why I enjoy things. Yeah.
Wow. Was there a real moment of taking stock? And as you say, it's a job which takes you from one thing to the next thing in an unplanned way. It sounds as if you've just embraced that to the maximum.
Yeah, I think you have to. You have to be brave. In this career, if you're a gambler in life, like if you like the element of let's roll the dice, then do this job. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what the number's going to be rolled, meaning what job's going to come your way or where life's going to take you. One minute you're in Scotland, another minute you're in South Africa. You're just living this crazy life that is fun. But there is that downside. There is that side where, especially when I was younger, I don't do it anymore, luckily now. But when I was younger, I struggled with the whole, I didn't get the job, and I'd cry and be upset and be all kind of like, oh, I'm not good enough. And, you doubt so much in your career and so much in your life. That side of it is very hard and very depressing, and you can get very down. So I think you also, and I say this also to the young people that ask me these questions, I say to them, be prepared to also know when to give up. I've met people that have been in the profession 20, 25 years and maybe had one job and they still keep going. And to me, I'm like, at that point, nah, it's just, no, I couldn't do it. I mean, thank goodness they're resilient, and then they do other jobs like waitressing or what. God, I've parked cars, washed cars, raced cars. I like anything to do with cars. I've cleaned and waitress tables. I've worked in debt collecting on the phone. Like, I've done every other job under the sun in my first few years to make sure that my mind was active doing other things. But always knew in the back of my mind that if within 10 years my career hadn't taken off, I was actually ready to just throw in the towel. And by that, I don't mean a big job. I just mean working. Success to me is not fame. Success is not fame. And people confuse that all the time. Fame is an entirely different animal. And it's not, at least in my experience, it's not what it's all cut out to be. I experienced that side of fame quite, in my late 20s when Goodness Gracious Me happened. And I thought it was so much fun. I loved it for about the first year. And then after that, I realized that actually it's really fickle. And, it's a bit of fun. Someone recognizes you or whatever, and you get a few perks here and there. But genuinely, it doesn't fill your belly, if you understand what I mean. It doesn't give you that, like, what your family does, which is that Christmas feeling. Like, you feel safe with your family. You feel safe with your friends. You don't feel safe with fame.
Is it something you can get addicted to?
Oh, 100%. You see it with younger actors. I've always said that thank goodness EastEnders came to me in my 30s and 40s, because if I'd have had EastEnders in my 20s, I don't think I'd be a very pleasant person, because I wasn't ready for that kind of attention. Soaps give you a lot of attention. You become famous very quickly, and people have you in your house all the time and they think they know you. So thank goodness it happened older, because I could separate that kind of excitement when people meet you to just being oh, they just saw me on EastEnders last night, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm the most brilliant actor in the entire world. So yeah, but that happens to younger actors, I find. People confuse success with fame.
And also, for any of us, putting your sense of self-worth into the hands of the approval of strangers is a very dangerous thing to be doing.
It is, but we do that as actors, if you think about it, right? We do that. When I go on stage doing panto, I'm like, if the audience is not laughing or if the audience isn't screaming at you because they're happy, you're thinking, oh, am I useless? Everything, it's so self-referential, and it's so, all actors have egos. You can't be an actor and not have one. So it's keeping that in check. It's realizing the value of yourself within that system. But that also comes with age. And so, you do forgive younger actors because you go, okay, you'll go through it yourself. I think I just fast-tracked it with my car accident. Just something happened in that moment of flipping around in my car where I just really and truly realized. I mean, when the car flipped and I let go of the wheel and said, my life's been great, what I didn't realize is that the next voice I heard was of someone going, come on, you can do it, open your eyes, come on. And when I did open my eyes, he screamed because he said I'd been unconscious for 15 minutes. Now, in my brain, there'd been no time passed between me saying, oh, I've had a nice life, to him speaking. So where those 15 minutes went in my brain, I don't know. That's why I am really shocked that I'm still alive, because he said I was out cold for 15 and he just honestly thought I was dead.
That is scary. And this was just a stranger who rushed to...
This was a stranger who saw the accident happen. It was at 5:30 in the morning on my way to do a TV series called All About Me at Pinewood Studios. And at the time I lived in Sutton, which is quite a distance away. It's about a 45-minute drive. And I was very tired. I remember this happened on a very wet morning. This truck was flashing at me to get out the way, and I was already sort of going very fast. And that's when it happened. But he saw it coming the other way, and he pulled over and stopped to make sure I was okay. Because he said he heard this loud bang as the roof came off the car, as did I. And I remember feeling this, like, just stuff flying all over the car. The whole car was upside. I woke up with the car 3/4 in a ditch and me with sort of on my side. Steering wheel was on my shins, no roof of the car, and glass from head to toe. I was covered. But apparently I didn't break any bones, and it's because I relaxed. It's because I'd relaxed and let go of the wheel. That's why my body just moved with the car and I didn't break any bones. But if I had been tense and held on to the steering wheel, that's when they told me I would have broken every bone in my body.
That is terrifying. Good.
It is. It's really crazy. And of course, this was all while I was pregnant. So
yeah, exactly.
My fear was, of course, what's happened to the baby. And then they said to me in the hospital, they said, right, we're going to have to do a scan. We're going to check. You have to have an MRI or whatever it was. And I went, no. I said, you will not put any kind of radiation near me right now. I really want this baby. But they did say she might be born premature, which she was, because they said your body will only understand this shock a bit later. And they were right. It did. It took me a long time to get over that whole experience. And it made me slow down. It made me slow down in my life a little bit and let go of the control that I wanted over my life, and just thought, some power up there, whatever it is, whether it's God or whatever the being is up there, saved me, absolutely saved me. And I thought they must have saved me for a reason. So I've been trying to figure out what that is. And so I keep just going till I'll figure it out at some point.
At some point, after the panto.
After the panto.
Speaking of reality checks, though nothing to do with performance, something I've read that I wanted to ask you about was that at weekends, you and your husband used to sit down with your children and ask them to share everything about you that irritated them.
Yes,
and I cannot work out if that's amazingly healthy or just opening the door to a world of pain.
Well,
what was that?
It's both. Well, it was actually something I'd read. It was a book, a psychology book that I'd read. And it said that, as much as parents get irritated with their children, children get irritated with their parents, because you're all living together. Cohabiting is a hard thing. So we used to do this thing on Sundays. It was called the safety zone. So after we'd have our Sunday dinner, we'd go to the conservatory and we'd sit around the table and we'd say, right, everyone has 5 minutes to say anything that they want to, good or bad, and the other person has to just listen. You can't talk back. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it was like, Mum, you shouted at me when I hadn't done that. Mum, you did this wrong. And I'd be like, oh, goodness, I don't know if this is like a good or bad. But it then meant that the kids, and this is from the age of about 6 and 7, they felt like they had a voice. And I would quietly go away and go, oh, okay, maybe I am just, being a bit of a helicopter mother or something, and maybe I should just cut them some slack. And it's actually a very good way to get your kids to let go and release and, then have another week of school where they can then whinge and moan for the following Sunday. Because we see as adults, I mean, I certainly do this. My husband always says, you've had the best night out when you've danced away and had so much fun and laughed, but you have one thing to complain about.
Yes.
And children also have that, and they need a safe space. So I highly recommend Safe Sundays, where you literally go, right, you have 5 minutes, say everything that you want to, and I won't speak back. I mean, we did it to kids as well, but we were a lot nicer to them.
Now that they're getting older, though, surely it's payback time.
Oh, God, yeah. But I don't know, we only did it for a couple of years. But when they became teenagers, there was no point. They wouldn't even come to the table to sit down. So.
Yeah, no. Nina, it is so fantastically interesting speaking to you, but I will let you go. There is a pantomime to be performed later today. Before you rush back and give your evening fairy sugar snap, let me ask, why does dance matter to you?
Oh, wow. I have loved dancing since I was very little. I think it's a way of genuinely expressing how you feel. If I'm feeling happy, sad, whatever, and I'm listening to music of some kind especially, I can't help it. My body just moves. It always has done. And growing up in the cultures that I've grown up in, dance is a really brilliant way of showing happiness. I'm normally the first person on the dance floor and the last person on the dance floor. At my niece's wedding in October, I think I danced for 5 hours straight.
A double day of pantomime holds no terrors for you then.
Yeah, that's true. No, not at all. Not at all. Dance is life. Genuinely, it is.
Nina, it has been such a joy. Thank you for bringing this year of our series to a very festive panto sprinkle conclusion. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Hurrah. Nina describing pantomime as basically a stage version of a Bollywood movie is the most acute definition I've heard. Genius. Though I'm not sure if even Bollywood has embraced the pantomime cow. And I'm amazed at the range of our conversation. So frank, whether about her childhood joy in dance or later inequalities in pay. I really hope you enjoyed it. Jack and the Beanstalk is at York Theatre Royal. Details in our show notes, along with everything RAD. This is our last episode of 2023. We have, incredibly, released almost 50 episodes of Why Dance Matters. Next year will be full of more amazing guests, including a special conversation for our 50th. Do subscribe and like the podcast because you won't want to miss that. And thank you so much for some very kind comments, including the person who said my laugh was unbearable. You're not telling me anything I don't know. Our guest today was Nina Wadia. Why Dance Matters is made by the RAD team of Niamh Carey-Furness, Keisha Dodd and Katie Hagan. Our artwork is by Bex Glendinning. Our producer, Sarah Miles, was intrigued by pantomime cows and made the mistake of asking AI to generate images of cows performing pantomime. For the love of all that's holy, please don't do that. Nightmare images. Instead, have a lovely, peaceful holiday. I'm David Jays, and I'll see you soon.